Senator, I know you're very happy because now you can officially begin the real work on redistricting. You've got some information in this week that you really needed for this process.
Yeah, the United States Census Bureau has released the county-specific information that we've been waiting to get that data so that we can really start in earnest on the redistricting process. We will be charged in the Missouri House and Missouri Senate of putting forth a map that reduces Missouri's congressional representation from 9 districts to 8. It's not a pleasant process. It's not Republican or Democrat. With Missouri losing a congressman, it's a very devastating thing, but it's our responsibility to start that network. Now that we've received that data, we'll start in earnest next week.
How long until you can actually see some trends to where you can say, well, it looks like we're going to have to shift things this way or that way?
Well, we know already that every congressional district is going to have to grow in geographic size because the state, although it did grow in population, didn't grow relative to the rest of the United States of America's population. It will probably be end of March, early part of April before we really are able to see where those real population losses are and then how we're going to have to redraw these congressional districts to fit that representation. We'll begin our public hearings actually this Friday in Springfield and then carry all those over next week, culminating in a joint House and Senate hearing on redistricting in St. Louis and Jefferson City so that we can hear from affected parties and those individuals about how best, in their opinions, both from congressmen and women and their staff, on how best to redraw those maps. So next week will be a lot of information, and then it is getting down to the nitty-gritty of drawing lines all the way down to the household level. It's a pretty daunting task.
Have you finalized when you'll be in southeast Missouri?
The chair has not announced that yet, but we're still going to have one probably in the Poplar Bluff area at Three Rivers Community College. I just don't know the date on exactly when that's going to occur.
You also wanted to touch out during your report on the minimum wage in Missouri as opposed to the federal minimum wage and how that might affect job growth.
Yeah, it's a pretty controversial topic. I'm not the most popular individual right now, but what I have done is I've introduced legislation that I want Missourians to have a grown-up conversation about and think about. And that quite simply is this. Our minimum wage is one of 9 in the country that have an automatic escalator in them tied to the consumer price index. So as the consumer price index goes up, our minimum wage goes up. And that will conceivably put us in a position to where our state's minimum wage will be higher than the federal minimum wage. Now, right now, the only state that borders us that has a higher minimum wage than the federal minimum wage is the state of Illinois. Missouri's minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. Illinois' is $8.25 an hour. I would respectfully submit to our neighbors, and many economists have said and pointed to the fact that Illinois' minimum wage at $8.25, higher than the federal, has contributed in significant amounts to its unemployment rate and all the other problems that it sees there in and around jobs and employment, because it has put itself at a competitive disadvantage relative to the location of industries. And it's just not minimum wage jobs that we're talking about. All jobs going all the way up the scale are tied to the minimum wage. So what my bill does is it says in 2006, when this was passed by a vote of the people, we had a different economy and we lived in a different world. Post the 2008 Great Recession and the massive unemployment rates that we are now experiencing in the state of Missouri and all across this country, in my opinion, it's time to send back to a vote of the people for their determination of whether or not they want, in the state of Missouri, a minimum wage that is higher than the federal minimum wage. And that's what my legislation seeks to do, and we had a hearing on that, as well as another piece of legislation that I had, which is paycheck protection, to make sure that those individuals that work for the government that have to join a union, the union cannot take money out of their paycheck without their consent.
Senator, thank you so much for the visit once again. As always, we appreciate it.